The return of wayward researcher Silica was met with little noise from Galatian Academy, but clearly having her back on board was important to Provost Anahita Baird. So important, in fact, that after she sent a shuttle for Correz, she didn't call back at all. Fortunately, the payment was transferred, but everyone agreed that for all the runaround Correz gave them, they deserved more, and so they waited to see if there would be another job for them. They waited 1 day, then 2, then 3, but still there was no contact from the Provost. Sebastian called occasionally though, and apologetically informed them that Anahita was extremely busy interviewing her new guest about a myriad of things related to her plan. Finally though, after day 4 of waiting, Sebastian called again, and said that maybe it would be best if the company looked for opportunities somewhere else for a while, because Provost Baird was clearly too busy with other things. Which meant that, for the first time in a long while, Cart Logistics found itself free to do whatever they wished, and they wasted no time in searching for new opportunities to do that logistics thing they had in their name. And as they left, said opportunity appeared from an unexpected angle, Herr Ludwig of Tritakian Corporation.
"Now, this is an opportunity we cannot pass, Captain Sir,"
he said over the comm to Mr. Cart, presenting his findings.
"No proper employee should even think about ignoring this situation, not when there are thousands of credits to be made."
"I'm not sure if this is a good idea, Ludwig," the boss replied. "It feels like it would attract a bit too much attention to show up on Tibisema right now."
"Nonsense, sir. If anything, avoiding the place would be weirder. Every merchant, every smuggler and corporate trader are probably on their way there now. Whenever there's violence like that, there's always good profit to be made."
And indeed, the opportunity did seem rather interesting. According to Ludwig, who got this information only stars know from where, there was unrest brewing on a small Tritakian world of Tibisema. It was a good place for it, away from corporate core territory and in a system where Kanta's den was, so any military response had to take into account the fact that the deranged pirate warlord could suddenly decide to get involved, and no one wanted that. And the planet itself, a barren rock floating in space, was also known as birthplace of the only worker union in entire Tritakian influence sphere. Tibisema Minor Union was like a tumor that the company never wanted to acknowledge, as if mere mention of it sent shivers down the spines of its capitalist masters. The workers got so powerful that at one point they even managed to press their demand for 1 day off per month past the corporate board, and it was said that Tritak CEO shed a tear when she had to sign it. But now it seemed the miners once again had enough, and demanded something as unthinkable as a day off every week, which immediately provoked an armed response from local Tritak security forces. And that would be it, if not for the fact that the security company that was sent to pacify the strike ended up being pacified itself, right into the ground. And the miners, seeing that, were suddenly filled with confidence. "Why are we working for these corp slave drivers," they shouted in the tunnels, "if we can work for ourselves and be free?" Needless to say, the idea quickly became popular, and within a week there were strikes and clashes with corp security in every tunnel, and even on the orbital station above the planet itself. And when some of those fights were won, the leaders of the Union decided that now was their time, and officially proclaimed that the planet should belong to its people. As might be expected, Tritakian responded with sending more security units there, and even offered considerable amounts of money to independent merchants who would be willing to supply local loyalists before relief force arrived. "I suppose it is a way to get in good graces with the corporation, if we help them out here," Mr. Cart said, after Ludwig described him the situation. But the small corporate man just looked at him with a puzzled look.
"Well, yes, you could look at it that way," he said, but Mr. Cart noticed this little weasel-like glint in his eyes, which meant that Herr Ludwig had another, better idea. "But the thing is, I've checked market data from Tibisema, and it looks like the rebels are actually looking for weapons and supplies as well, and are offering much better prices than Tritakian board. I'd say we take the deal.
Really? And you're okay with it? Wouldn't we be undermining your corp if we took that deal?
Of course, Captain Sir. We'd be stupid not to take it. The coaches back in the office always told us that we must seize any and all opportunities for greater profit. And right now, selling weapons to the rebels is a way to set greater profits. As a proper Tritakian employee, I am obligated to do it, and I'm sure many others will do so too. Taking a war deal would be disgraceful and would lower my employee credit rating.
Mr. Cart shook his head at that. It's been years since Ludwig joined them, but his mind was clearly still back in the corporation. He wondered if it would even be possible for this man to ever think like a normal person, though then again Mr. Cart understood that he was perhaps not the best example of a normal person. Still, it suited him just fine. If there was more money in helping those unionized miners, then he'd gladly smuggle some rocket launchers and food rations for them, and there was even an added bonus of giving Tritakion a little kick in the process, and, as Ludwig proved, even people from the company had nothing against that. So, with Galatian Academy jobs on hold, the company set off to source some perfectly legal self-defense utensils, and then deliver them to embattled workers who simply wished to express their basic human rights. And as luck would have it, Cart Logistics didn't even have to look far to buy the equipment the rebels needed, because there was an abundance of weapons on the market in Nova Maxius, in the very same system where Tibisema was. Apparently, a few weeks ago, some inexperienced warlord from Cantor's Den decided to try and take over Maxius Station. He tried to be all sneaky and careful about it, smuggled weapons and hid them all over the massive station, and quietly gathered his men in small groups in preparation for one swift, decisive strike. Problem was, pirate efforts were nowhere near as stealthy as that warlord wanted, and local security caught onto them pretty quickly, and prepared a surprise of their own. They quietly tracked every single weapon stash and pirate rally point, hired a bunch of mercenaries to buff up their numbers, and then, when all the weapons were brought to the station, but pirate themselves were not, the security launched its strike. The pirates, as might be expected, got taken completely by surprise. They were the ones who were supposed to do the ambushing after all, and were wiped out completely. The warlord himself was captured and sent back to Cantor's Den, in about 11 pieces, with a note attached to them that kindly asked the Pirate Queen to leave Nova Maxius the fuck alone. Everyone thought that pulling a stunt like that would provoke Cantor into doing something stupid, but the only thing she sent back was a neatly wrapped gift basket and a letter in which she thanked Nova Maxius security for taking care of her stupid lieutenant. After all, if he got himself caught with his pants down like a moron, he deserved what he got. The relations between raiders of Cantor's Den and Nova Maxius were really a bit odd, but at least it meant that no retaliation strike would come, at least for a while. It also meant that people of the station now found themselves with all the weapons the pirate prepared in their warehouses, and when Cart Logistics arrived, the locals were more than happy to sell said weapons. And they offered a good price too, and not just because they had so much. The other reason was their questionable quality. Some of the weapons were indeed made by professionals, but it was clear that most of that deranged arsenal was made by pirates themselves. Railguns that fell apart after first shot, lasers with lenses so bent out of shape they could at best be used for cooking, or power armor made from mining rigs that couldn't be opened without a welder, or grenades that looked like they were taken straight from old Earth in 17th century. Some ambitious spacer even repurposed a ship-mounted plasma cannon into a mobile version, though it was unwieldy, heavy, and has to be carried by at least 6 people, 2 of which at the front would probably burst into flames the moment someone pulled the trigger. But while this arsenal was dangerous to both sides of conflict, it still worked. and so the rebels on Tibisema would gladly pay for it. And so Cat Logistics stocked up on every weapon they could buy, as well as more mundane supplies like food and medicines, and then set course for Tibisema, hoping to smuggle it right into the rebel hands. Only thing was, smuggling was not necessary, because when they reached the revolting planet, there were no patrols around it. Some Tritakian ships flew around here and there, but it was nowhere near a blockade everyone was expecting, and so the company could simply set a course for the station orbiting the small barren planet and dock there, on the side occupied by the miners. It looked like combat was still going on, and the station was divided roughly in half, and it was similar deal with the mine tunnels below. Still, Varuna, House and Zala, together with a bunch of guards, were sent to the station to find someone to pawn off the weapons to. Some of the clone troopers assisted them as well, but Mr. Cart insisted that they wear helmets all the time, to avoid suspicions, since cloning was still frowned upon after all. Fortunately, the deals went smoothly. The rebels were more than willing to add some heavy weapons to their arsenal, even if those weapons were a danger to their own operators. And, what's more important, they were also willing to pay a significant amount of credits for said weapons and other supplies. And by the time the delegation returned, company account was buffed by a significant amount of credits. All in all, it was a very profitable deal, but Varuna seemed to have some reservations about it. "This feels wrong, boss," she said to Mr. Cart when she returned from the station. "All of it, from start to finish. I was thinking that the miners were a bit too well armed and organized before, and House confirmed my suspicions. They have outside help, pirate help to be precise. House said he asked around and he apparently knows 4 out of 5 leaders of this union, and all of them were working for Kanda at some point." Makes sense. Her den is in the system, no wonder she'd have interest in the place. "Yes, but I'm not sure if the miners themselves know about it, and if they do not care, which is bad in itself. Do we really want another pirate-infested world in the sector?" "And do we want another Tritakian-controlled slave mine?" the boss asked, and Varuna had to nod. It was a choice between 2 bad options, and it really was difficult to decide which one was worse. "Fair enough, boss, but the other weird thing is Tritak response in itself, or lack of it. I thought they'd send a fleet here immediately and force the miners back. All they need to do is control the orbit and the rebels will starve to death in the tunnels. But they're not doing that. Apparently the board is discussing options right now. Send a few companies of security marines, but that's that. Hire a bunch of mercs too, but it's not really working in their favor. I heard on the station that one company switched sides 8 times in a day, because every time other side offered them a better deal, and after 8th time they just took all the money they got and left. Normally the board would have sent hounds to chase them to the ends of the sector to fulfill the contract, or to retake their money, but they're doing nothing." "Maybe they have their hands full dealing with hegemony," Mr. Cart wondered. "Last I heard, the border conflict was getting more and more hectic." "Maybe, but I'm not sure this is it. This planet is categorized as company property. They should be sending all they have to ensure it stays in their hands. There must be something else we don't know about all this. It's whatever it is, I don't like it." "Well, at least there's money to be made while this chaos lasts." Mr. Cart waved his stubby hand dismissively. "So how about we do what we used to do in good old days, eh? Make bank and don't worry one bit about politics." "Well, I'm with you, boss. Just let's be careful out there. I'm sure Tritakian is plotting something, and I don't want us to be caught in the middle of it." He nodded, but didn't think much about it. After all, if someone deserved to lose all their planets, Tritakian was certainly that someone. So, instead of worrying about it, Mr. Cart simply set course for another system, because as long as this revolution lasted, it would pay top credits for supplies. And he was going to make as much of this opportunity as possible. The company did 2 more runs to Tibisema, and each time they were there the station seemed to be the same, and to Varuna's surprise, there were still no news about Tritakian response, except for vague rumors that it was being prepared. Still, after the last batch of weapons and supplies was unloaded, Cat Logistics decided that they profiteered from this revolution quite enough and set course back to Galatian Academy, where, as it turned out, quite a lot happened in those few weeks the company was away. Anahita, Scylla and Gargoyle must have been busy, because as soon as the fleet was in comm range, it was flooded with a stream of call requests, all originating from the Provost's office. "You're back. Good," Anahita said as soon as Mr. Cat set up connection. She looked exhausted, with dark circles around her eyes, but a manic light glistened in them as well. "I assume you had your fun with your little revolution?" "Spying on us again, Provost?" Boss's eyes narrowed under his helmet. "Believe it or not, no. But rumors do travel around. Not about you, mind, but about the revolution itself. It seems that every independent trader went there to make a quick buck, so I assumed you did the exact same thing. But that's not important." She shook her head, as if trying to get her thoughts back on track. "Your recovery of Miss Corres has sped up our job considerably. Very good, very efficient. She allowed me to understand several pieces of old Calico's files that were beyond my capability to decrypt." It was odd to see Anahita Bed so openly admitting she didn't know something. This must have been really big, Mr. Kant thought, so he just nodded and allowed the woman to continue. "I won't bore you with technical details, especially since we're still working out some of the pieces there. The part that concerns you, however, is this. Tritakion may already have access to some of the data we will need to reactivate the gate network. Of course, being Tritakion, they will never admit it openly, and if we'll ask, they'll bury all the data somewhere. In fact, they already did bury said data. But our dear old previous provost might have caught on to something. A place called Alpha Site, at the very top of Tritakion top secret list, and they erased all intel about this place, except for one name, one Khalees Astrea. Gargoyle interrupted there with a dossier. Astrea was apparently some weapons specialist working for the corporation, but she suddenly disappeared. She started theorizing where she might have gone, but Anahita muted her and continued. "We suspect she was promoted to work in this mysterious Alpha Site, and that's where you come in. I want you to find this Astrea woman, and Alpha Site itself, and learn what you can about it. I assume landing or docking with it may be impossible, if it is even planetary or orbital facility. From what we learned, Tritac wised up in recent years, and moved some of their projects to mobile fleets, so they're harder to track down. But we will provide you with best sensor package we have. It should be able to spot a single person or anomalous energy reading under energy shields 20 kilometers below ground. Should make your job a bit easier." "It should indeed," Mr. Cat replied, "assuming we can find either that woman you talk about or the site itself." "Yes, that will be the difficult part, without a doubt," Anahita confirmed. "But at the same time, it is Tritakion we are talking about. You should be able to simply go to one of their worlds and bribe someone for information." Gargoyle was spastically waving her arms around on the screen, so Anahita unmuted her with a sigh. "Or you could go to our good old boy Arroyo and ask him. He'll probably ask you for some dumb favor in return, but it may be cheaper than bribing someone on the board, especially since you'd have to bribe your way through lower officials first, before they even allow you to meet with someone from the board to bribe in the first place." "That is also an option indeed," Anahita confirmed. "Thank you, Gargoyle. But yes, Mr. Cart, I care not how you will resolve this conundrum. Just do it. Find Astrea, and if possible bring her to us, even unconscious or in handcuffs. You seem to be quite good at finding researchers. And find Alpha Site. Scan it with our scanners. We must know what Tritakion is doing if it can help our own plans. Of course, monetary rewards will be included, no need to ask. Now please, get to it." there were so many questions boss of Cart Logistics wanted to ask, but Anahita simply cut the connection and got back to work. So, the company did so too. They took the scanner sent from Academy via shuttle, installed it and set course for Unrest, and House already prepared to pay Arroyo Manor another friendly visit. But as the fleet was on its way to Tritakian capital, they received news broadcasted on almost every single possible frequency. The Miners' Union of Tibisema has eradicated all Tritakian holdouts, both on the planet and the station above it, and declared their barren rock an independent world. No one could really believe it happened. Sure, there was always unrest somewhere, but almost never to the point of actually breaking away from such a major power as Tritakian Corporation. The fact that the miners made it was quite inspiring, for about 2 hours, after which another message came. One in which Warlord Kanta and her pirate admirals have proclaimed official protection of the mining world. And suddenly, it all made sense. It was not just a revolution, but an invasion in disguise, and Tritak now had to contend with shame of losing one of their worlds to universally hated raiders. Still, across the sector, not many people really cared, for, as was said, seeing the megacorp brought down a bit was a pleasant view for everyone. Everyone except Varuna, who told Mr. Card that this entire situation made her afraid. The fact that Tritakian didn't defend their world must have meant that they had other, more profitable and more important things to deal with. Hence, whatever was more important than an entire mining world was probably dangerous, so they should tread carefully during their investigation. Mr. Card agreed, and wondered if this mysterious Alpha site was perhaps not the reason the megacorp was busy. Still, there was no point in overthinking matters. There was a job to be done, and so the company made way to Air Cabres and contacted Arroyo Manor from orbit. At first, the butler, who seemed even more arrogant than before, tried to dismiss them, but all it took was House appearing on the screen for a second with a bright smile, and Alfred suddenly became a picture of cooperation. He patched the comm to Ryan Arroyo, and Mr. Cart, together with House, standing menacingly in the background, explained what they wanted. "Righto, doable," Arroyo said, without even asking why they looked for this Astraea woman. "Not for free, though, you understand. Nothing's free. Worry not, nothing you can't afford, just a small business trip. I'm going to send you video files which implicate me in a conspiracy to hack Hegemony Com Relay." "You... what?" Mr. Cart asked, completely taken aback by this sudden development. "I mean, you were implicated in it. What, you want us to destroy them?" "Nope. I want you to find some unscrupulous bastard, a pirate or maybe a Syndrian officer, they're pretty much on the same level of blockheadedness, and sell them these files. Or give them, I don't care. But they must be aware what these files contain, so that they can blackmail me with them." "You want to be blackmailed?" "Yep. See, the files I'm giving you are fake. A child with brain damage would know they're fake, but that is precisely the point. Once someone tries to blackmail me with these files, my credibility will be untouchable. Even if someone, somehow, will provide actual, true and concrete evidence, I will be able to say that it is just another better fake." "Right. I'm going to pretend I understand what you meant by that, Mr. Arroyo." "Fortunately, you don't need to, mysterious caller. Just do what I ask and come back here, and I'll have the data you need on a silver platter." "Very well, just tell your butler to stop delaying us every time. We're a busy company." "Sure you are. No go, stranger. Get me blackmailed." Mr. Cart turned to Varuna when the call ended, but she just shrugged, as if to say that this kind of thinking was not even remotely weird. It was just business after all, so they treated it like it and set course for Tibisema again, because if there was a place that swarmed with ambitious people without morals, it would certainly be the newly liberated mining world. And the idea was right. When the fleet arrived on the station above the barren planet, they could see marks of all pirate enclaves there. Cantor's Den logo was the most prominent, of course, but there were others. Smiths of Captain Starwalks, Thulian raiders, even some of the less dogmatic members of the Ludic Path came here to throw their weight around and make some business in the vacuum after Tritakian Overseas left. The miners were there as well, and, for now at least, they were still technically in control, but the amount of pirate warships in and around the station clearly stated that their rule was only symbolic. Still, nothing could be changed now, so instead Cart Logistics set off to look for someone to sell their data to. And it took them about 20 minutes. All they needed was House taking a trip to the bar. There, he singled out some woman who looked vicious enough, buttered her up and then sold her the data. By the time he left the bar, she was already preparing a message to Arroyo, and she even paid top credits to acquire it. Mr. Card decided to let House keep half of it. It was the least he could do for all the help this old pirate provided all the time, and then got back to Tritakian capital to inform Arroyo that the business was done. "Haha, my friend, I wish I was blackmailed like this every day," Arroyo said with a smile as soon as he picked the comm. "I don't know who you found, but they're clearly not the sharpest knife in a drawer. I mean, as I said, a child with brain damage could see that these videos are fake, and yet they still try to blackmail me with them. Truly, people's greed know no bounds sometimes." Mr. Cart was about to say something about greed, Tritakian pots and kettles, but decided to just keep his mouth shut. Instead, he gently pressed Arroyo to get back to business. Of course. Would you believe, mister, that I didn't even have to bribe anyone to get this info? Turns out I actually worked with Mrs. Trier some time ago. Truly, human memory works in bewildering ways." "A mysterious matter indeed," the boss said coldly, knowing full well that Arroyo had this knowledge beforehand. "Yes, well, anyway, here's the deal. Apparently, Khalees left the system after resigning from her post. Yeah, as if anyone resigns from work for the company. Anyway, she left on a ship, with transponder off, so not that easy to track. However, she also mentioned another ship, Hamatsu, which belongs to one Callisto Ibrahim from Agrius." "Yeah, I heard about her. She runs salvage operations there. I think we sold some scrap to her a few times." "Very good, so you won't have to introduce yourself. Still, as Trier mentioned some interesting modifications she had in mind for Hamatsu, ones that apparently modified the very drive core, which is, let's just say, not the brightest idea. Even I know that, and I know shit about spaceships. But yes, that's your lead. Hamatsu, Agreus, Callisto Ibrahim. Oh, and don't tell me why you're looking for her. I have a feeling I'd rather not know." "Very well then," Mr. Cat replied. "Then thank you for your cooperation, and we'll be on our way." He was just about to disconnect, but then Arroyo suddenly smiled coldly. "By the way, Mr. Cart, I think you should know that the board is aware of your recent involvement with this entire Tibisema rebellion. I'm afraid that while you may keep a low profile, your rebel business partners are decidedly less cautious. I believe it costs some feathers to be ruffled among some of the top members of the corporation." The only response he got was stunned silence, so the corporate man continued. "Oh, worry not. This doesn't really mean anything. Sure, some of the board members are now rather cross with you, but others actually applauded your business sense. You have seen an opportunity and you seized it. I myself and many other board members have made a significant profit trading with these rebels over the past few months." "You traded with people who wanted to take away your planet? In what reality does that make sense?" "In Tritakian reality, Mr. Cart. Simply put, now that our rebels, who, let us be honest, are simply bandits marching under naive utopian slogans, are in control, they surely start to realize that Tibisema is a rather
difficult holding. It lacks any source of water, and unlike two other settlements in the system, Nova Maxis and Cantor's Den, it is far away from the ice rings around the star. That necessitates ice extraction, transportation, and processing, all of which take money, time, and organization that I am pretty sure our rebel pirates lack. In fact, they already contacted several mining consortia to help supply the station with ice, and most of said suppliers just so happen to be a part of our corporation, under the table, of course. Then there's matter of food, which is not produced anywhere in the system, forcing whoever is in charge of the place to import it. I'm sure our pirate friends can rate for it, and no doubt they will, but whoever is now managing Tibisema surely knows that this is unsustainable and sketchy proposition at best. They can't rely on random raids to feed their people, because that means they're one failed attack away from having their heads ripped off by a starving mob and put on a pike. So they will have to make procurements elsewhere, and who would be as insane as to trade with known notorious pirates? Tritakian Corporation, Mr. Cart answered. Yes, well, that was a bit of a rhetorical question, but you are indeed correct, and, believe it or not, the company has lately acquired several agricultural businesses, which means a new market for their goods is needed. Of course, losing Tibisema does mean that we lose access to mineral mines located there, but there are many other options for acquiring such basic raw materials, options which, most importantly, do appear a lot cheaper than maintaining an entire planet far away from Tritakian main operation area. So, Mr. Cart, obviously, those board members who had interests on Tibisema are upset with you and will never invite you to tea, but the rest of the company acknowledges this development as just yet another business opportunity, and I can guarantee you it would not happen if the board couldn't turn it into profit in one way or another. Plus, it neatly solves our issue with Tibisema Minor Union. Ah, of course. Mr. Cart rolled his eyes under the helmet. We can't have that, can we? Obviously. And it is another thing that new masters of Tibisema now have to deal with. A union of miners with ideas way above their station. I give the revolutionaries about a week before they start enslaving their own workers at gunpoint. Which will mean you'll be able to buy ore cheaper while making good money with transport of food and ice, and sell that without bothering with the union and maintenance costs of Tibisema mines, correct? Exactly that, Mr. Cart. Very good, you are familiar with absolute basics of economy. At this rate, few more decades, and you may even find yourself in a managerial position in our company. I'll pass, but still thank you for the offer. We'll make good use of it. I really do not care, unless it's going to fill my account. Still, on my behalf, I thank you for not sending your half-machine associate to negotiate this time. Good profit to you. House grinned in the back, proud that he made an impression. It meant he could probably invite himself to a royal manor at some later time and talk more about business. But there was no time for that right now, as the company immediately left the system and moved on to investigate their new lead. They plotted a course to Agrius, powered up their engines and prepared for another trip, but then, suddenly, Midnight's face distorted on her screen, and the AI made a noise that was something between a gasp and a whimper. Everything okay? Some residue from being too close to Tritac servers? Mr. Cart asked. Midnight's face kept jumping between various states for a few more seconds, and then finally turned to him.
Yes. No. There has been a development, Mr. Cart.
Mr. Cart. It was the first time she didn't call him Pilot Cart, which is what he was, and it suddenly made him realize something. For all the rapport he built with her over the years, one weird outcast with another, it never really occurred to him that a significant part of Midnight Dissonance was a domain human. She was, for all intents and purposes, one of the Golden Masters of old, and that realization sent a shiver of freezing cold down Mr. Cart's spine. Just like the rest of them, she looked at him and probably just saw a living tool to be used for her own needs. It took all of his self-control to shake it off. No, he thought. They were not all like that. Lud was an example of it. But was she, though? A different part of his mind asked. Didn't she start a war that led to collapse of civilization just because she thought her view of the world was the only correct one? She did help us, though, the calm part of his mind said. All of us cloned walkers were freed because of her. Yes, free to do what? Die in the war against Domain? Wander aimlessly without orders until they starved to death? Where is this even going? The calm voice in his head asked. Midnight is not Lud. Marianne DeWitt was not Lud. She may be different. Yes, but what if she isn't? He was vaguely aware that Varuna asked him a question, but he could not focus his mind enough to listen and understand it. But then, another, softer voice rang in his head. She helped. She trusted us and others in the fleet. All it would take for any of us to end her once and for all is scrubbing the systems, or throwing her processing unit into a star, or hand her over to Hegemony or Tritag for no doubt obscene amount of credits. A human-AI hybrid with mind of Tritakian founder inside? They'd make you billionaires for it. And yet she stuck with you, knowing full well no one else had any reason to trust her. Other voices in Mr. Cart's head went silent. There were still some nagging doubts, but, for now at least, he decided to repay Midnight's trust with his own. "I'm sorry, you were saying?" he finally said, staring firmly at the screen. The AI was still flickering, but something in the way she looked was almost manic.
I said my subroutines found my core databanks,
she said, excited as much as AI could be.
All my memories, all historical data, technological breakthroughs, all of it.
That's great, Mr. Cart replied. Maybe you could use them to bypass all the work the Provost wants to do.
Perhaps, but there is a problem. The remnant subroutines that found it were detected by Hegemony patrols. A day later, they intercepted a message. Hegemony has found out our base and are preparing to destroy it. If they do...
Then your databanks are gone as well, Mr. Cart finished.
Yes, I know you have other plans, but I must ask you to return to Ilm with utmost urgency. We need to prepare for a dangerous operation.
Already on it, he replied, punching in the new course. But as he did, that doubting voice reared its head in the depths of his mind once again. Guess we're going to see if she's like others soon enough. And the only thing Mr. Cart could do was to hope that this voice was wrong.